صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد وبارك اللهم على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. My dear brothers and sisters, last 2 weeks ago we talked about the sleepers of Ephesus, the narrative of the 7 young men who, because of faith, decided to go back to a cave to plan out how they could continue spreading the message of God alone, spreading the message of the prophethood of Jesus, peace upon him. And in that same chapter that we're commended to read once a week every Friday, is another story right after. There's 4 stories. The second one after the young men of the cave is the story of 2 men. One of them is a rich man, wealthy. And Allah says, we gave him 2 gardens. And the gardens isn't like a garden where you sit and there's a place that we're talking about fields, acres and acres, 2 of them. And they have a vineyard or 2 vineyards, a river between the 2 fields, and palm trees, and livestock, and every single year, every season, the fruits of the fields bring more wealth than the year before. And the demand for his product is incredible. And he comes to a point where he believes there's no way that my wealth that continues to build from these fields will ever go bad. No way that these fields will ever fail me. His friend hears him talking about this because he's telling it to his friend. He's saying to him, I'm better than you. And it seems God always, when he brings us in the Quran, the story, he doesn't bring us all the detail around it. He brings us the meaningful components of the story. But as we know, the reason that 2 friends might be having a conversation like that, perhaps one was saying to the other some kind of advice about something he may not be doing right. And he said to him, if God was so happy with you, he'd give you wealth like mine. Well, look at me. I'm wealthier than you. I have 2 fields, and I don't think I can ever go wrong with it. وَلَئِنْ وُدِدْتُ إِلَىٰ رَبِّي لَأَجِدَنَّ خَيْرًا مِنْهَا مُنْقَلَبًا. The man believes in God. This man, this wealthy man, he believes in Allah. He said, and even when I go back to my Lord, I don't think that he'll ever fail me in giving me anything better than this. Because if God wasn't happy with me, why would he give me all this wealth? Which is the logic that many people are using in our nation today, in our world today. That if they had worked harder, or if they would just do better, or if they were the right kind of people, they'd be making more money too. They just didn't work as hard as me. They just didn't do as much as me. I struggled for this. And I'm not negating that those who are wealthy, most of them struggled for it, especially in America. I'm aware. May God increase you in wealth and in children, and increase the wealthy with good intention when they're wealthy. But this man forgot something major about wealth. That wealth is a trust. We all can work. There can be 2 people working exactly the same, struggling through exactly the same circumstance. And one ends up with what we call a better deck, a better hand dealt to them from the deck of cards of life. Or in our narrative, that Allah decides that one person gets the wealth result from their work, and the other person has a little less fortune in this life. Does that mean that God is more pleased with the one that's wealthy? And what I tell you is, if the narrative is that you put your finger in the ocean and take it out, and all the wealth of this world is what's on your finger, then what do you think of the wealth of 2 fields, or 4 fields, thousands and thousands of acres? That's not how God gives when he's happy. God gives the trust of that wealth to those who have it. And the decisions we make with the wealth, that's how Allah's happy or unhappy with us. It isn't the other way around. How is this related to what we seek in life? You see, we employ everything that we can seek of resources. One who wants good on earth, a believer who wants to set earth right, to be aligned to the will of Allah, has to strive and struggle to seek every resource they can have at their disposal with a positive intention, never getting tempted to change their intention. Ali radiallahu anhu, he said, always keep the world in your hands, not in your heart. That we seek it. Just like the person who's seeking it for the sake of this world. Just like the person who seeks it looking for their happiness in it. And sometimes even more. But the reason a believer seeks it is to employ it in the best way, in the way that pleases God. This doesn't mean that the impact of the wealth shouldn't be seen on you and your family. This doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the wealth that God gives you on earth. There's enjoyment, and then there's embellishment. There's over luxury. And I'm not speaking to anyone here. May God bless you all in your wealth. And that's a praise. That's something we should be happy with and proud of. That there aren't many here, or any potentially, that embellish with their wealth. God only knows, of course. But from what we see, what we know that the narrative of our nation, the narrative of those that the wealthy that are here are around, that are wealthy like me, whether Muslim or non, is this belief that wealth means God's happy with me. And it's the belief that it's okay for me to seek wealth for its sake, because that's success. Seek the success of the hereafter, and God will bring at your footsteps the success of this world. Seek the resources of this world for the hereafter, and Allah will facilitate them. وَلَوْ أَمِنَ أَهْلُ الْقُرَى لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِنَ السَّمَاءِ بِمَا كَانُوا يُؤْمِنُونَ. That if the people of the nations believed, we would open the gates of the heavens for them by what they believed. There's a Sufi tradition that an emperor went out of his castle seeking to be inspired a bit, and he found a beggar on the way. And he said to the beggar, well, what is your need? What can I do for you? And he said, I don't think you can fulfill my need. The emperor got a little bit offended. He said, what do you mean? Do you know who I am? I'm the emperor of these lands. Tell me what your need is and I'll fulfill it. And he said, don't make a promise that you can't keep. He said, stop talking to me that way and tell me what you need, and I'll give you. So he said, all I want from you is to fill this bowl. And he had a small bowl in his hand. And he said, fill it with what? He said, anything you can. So the emperor brought the best food from his castle, from his empire, and filled the bowl. And as soon as he puts it in the bowl, it disappears. And then he puts more food, and it disappears. He orders all his men to bring the jewels of the empire, and he puts some of them in the bowl, and they disappear. Every time he puts anything in the bowl, it disappears. And the beggar said to him, this bowl is the desire that we have for wealth. It's the desire that you and your people have for wealth. Every time you seek something, and you're going after it, whether it's the next new car, and it happens to all of us. We're in our house is plenty big enough for our family. It's beautiful. But then we go to one of our friends that's a little wealthier, or maybe spent a little more on his house. And he's got a nicer living room. And then we start thinking about, our living room isn't as nice. Maybe we need to make this change. Maybe we need a bigger house. Maybe we need a nicer car so that we can have the better car than his house. That whisper is the whisper that will never be fulfilled. No matter what it is we chase, as soon as we get it, now the emptiness is back. Because that desire that we're after, that desire of this world that we're after, when we make it our goal, trust me, all it is hiding another need that we have. It's the emptiness inside that it's hiding. The emptiness that can only be filled with being comfortable that one is fulfilling one's life goal. That one is living for a greater purpose. And God doesn't want us to get rid of our desires for something that's tangible. In fact, He tells us if you want what's tangible, He tells us that the eternal tangible, the only thing that doesn't blow away in the wind. In the same surah, in the chapter of the cave, that after these two men, this wealthy man, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made his wealth, the entire fields were corrupted. And all the crops that year didn't yield any wealth. Not only that, he could never restore it. And everyone he brought to help him couldn't help him. وَمَا كَانَ مُنْتَصِرًا. No one could help him. They brought the best scientists at the time to see what's wrong with his fields, and they couldn't be restored. And his source of wealth was done. كَمَثَلِ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا, Allah says. The same as the life of this world. Like rain that was sent down from the heavens, and the fields grew with greenery and trees and fruits, and then in one storm, فَأَصْبَحَ هَشِيمًا تَذْرُوهُ الرِّيَاحُ, it went to ashes, and the wind took it away. That's what we chase in this world. But my young brothers and my young sisters, that doesn't mean that we don't make every possible faculty that we have to achieve the excellence in this life, to achieve the greatness in this world.